Welcome to the Wise Fiduciary Podcast. I'm Kate McBride, one of your hosts from Fiduciary Wise. Whether you're a thought leader, service provider, CEO, or decision maker, this podcast is for you. We break down best practices, the services and solutions available to you, discuss the latest topics, and shake up the industry norms. Join us as we explore, challenge, and navigate the future of fiduciary responsibility together. My name is Kate McBride. I'm an accredited investment fiduciary analyst and a Center for Fiduciary Excellence analyst and a board certified fiduciary. At Fiduciary Wise, I'm an ERISA 402A specialist and a member of the Department of Labor ERISA Advisory Council. The reason that we want to do this is because if you're an employer sponsoring a plan and you're signing the Form 5500, you're likely the plan's named fiduciary, and I bet you didn't know it. That means that you have the responsibility and the liability to run that plan in the exclusive sole interest of the plan participants. So if you're surprised to know that, keep listening, because the good news is a plan sponsor can delegate most of their plan responsibilities to a professional 402A named fiduciary, and we're going to talk about that today, and that will make a very big difference in how much your plan participants can save and how comfortably they can retire with some security.
I am Marta Hurst. I am a partner at Fiduciary Wise. I've spent, about 20 years in retirement plans, a little over 2 of those being here with Fiduciary Wise. I am also active in AIFA, and I really love consulting and talking with employers about their retirement plans and helping them make improvements and just making them aware of opportunities in their plan to improve, reduce their liability, and make things better for their participants ultimately.
So my name is Isaac Wood. I'm an ERISA 402A specialist at Fiduciary Wise as well. And before I tell you who me, I just want to say I'm really excited to be here, guys. This is going to be a lot of fun. We don't always think of fun and fiduciary together, but this podcast is going to bring those two things together. So very excited to be a part of this with both Kate and Marta. But I've got over 13 years in the financial industry. The last 7 of those were focused solely on ERISA plans. And what I've developed over those 7 years is actually a passion for 401k optimization. There's plan sponsors across this country that ERISA holds responsible, fiduciarily responsible for their 401k plans. And so many of them are either unable or incapable or just unaware of their fiduciary responsibilities. So I'm excited to be able to bring that knowledge, that education, and also some service and value to those plan sponsors across the country. My job here is to help those plan sponsors optimize their 401k plans so that they're able to be beneficial for each one of their employees. As we're going to talk about here over this entire season, really, is how that requires quality service providers providing quality service. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm excited to do that with both of you.
So for people who are listening today, if you've just started overseeing a retirement plan or you've been assigned 401k management responsibilities, you're part of your HR team, or you might be the treasurer of the company, or even the CEO, you have retirement plan responsibilities. So now what? The first thing to think about, I think, is that every plan has a named fiduciary, a 402A named fiduciary under ERISA. It's the overall fiduciary for the plan. So everyone is better off if you hand that responsibility to a professional 402A. And we're going to talk about why that is the case. Marta, let's start with you. Why is it the case that everyone is better off with a professional named fiduciary?
Every plan has a named fiduciary, whether they realize it or not. And so if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I don't know who my named fiduciary is, it's probably you. So there is a party that is responsible for overseeing all of the aspects of retirement plans. And really, there are 3 of those. So if we take a look at our handout really lays this out pretty nicely. So there are 3 different buckets or pillars underneath the ERISA umbrella: legal and management, investments, and administration. All of those, as you alluded to, Kate, all those flow up to the 402A fiduciary. So the 402A is ultimately responsible for everything. Now, under those different pillars. There are certainly service providers that you hire to assist with the responsibilities of the plan, like the third-party administrator that is doing annual testing and keeping up with your plan document, or an investment professional that is helping with investments in your plan, or maybe even participant education. But all of that ultimately still flows back to the 402A named fiduciary, which by default is the plan sponsor.
And if you're watching this right now, you can see on the screen a flow chart that shows this. If you're listening to us, there is a link in the description that will pop up the screen that we're talking about now. But Marta, what you mentioned there is so almost revolutionary to a lot of plan sponsors out there, right? Because so many plan sponsors offer their employees a 401k plan or a 403b plan, or some type of retirement plan. But how many of them know that these even exist?
Well, I agree. And when we started this podcast episode, we talked about, if you're kind of new to this role, but to your point, there's people out there that are already operating in have some kind of responsibility related to a retirement plan, but they don't know that these kind of how this operates too. So for me, it's nice to have a visual to see, okay, these are really the areas of retirement plans. And do I know what these mean? What service providers are under them? What types of responsibilities all roll up under this retirement plan umbrella? Things like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you mentioned the three areas there, right? Like there's investments, there's administration, and there's sort of the legal management of the 401k plan. And all of those, ERISA says all of these roles exist on every single 401k plan. And so as a plan sponsor, if you don't know who is filling those roles, you are filling that role. You're the default filler of the role, for lack of a better term, right? And I'm sure, Kate, you have a better legal term than I do on what that means, right? But as a plan sponsor, you are the fiduciary.
Exactly. I mean, the plan sponsor is the plan fiduciary, and the named fiduciary, unless they delegate that to someone else. So for instance, if you're at a plan and you are part of a team that is running the management of the 401k plan, that's great. And you may have voting meetings, you may have other meetings, you may take notes, all of that is good. But if you don't know who the actual plan fiduciary is, and it's usually the person who is signing that form 5500, the IRS form that goes in every year, a lot of the time, the people who sign that form 5500 have no idea that they are the named fiduciary. And that means all the liability for that plan is on their shoulders. That one person who is the named fiduciary, the chief honcho for running the plan. And one thing is, if you don't know that you're the named fiduciary, it doesn't matter. You still are the named fiduciary. Whether you know or didn't know, it's what you should have known. And so it's one of those things that it's really important to understand what your role is in running that plan, and that you have not only the ability to delegate the named fiduciary work to a professional named fiduciary, but you also have the ability and the responsibility to delegate any of the work on the plan that you are not an expert in. That is part of ERISA's rules, that if you don't have the expertise to run the plan or select prudently investments or run the record keeping or the third-party administration, all those things should be delegated by you in writing to other fiduciaries and service providers. It's one of the underpinnings of ERISA. Marta, you have so many details, and also Isaac, you do too, on all of these things. What more can you add about this overall fiduciary and delegation to other fiduciaries and service providers?
I think becoming the fiduciary to a retirement plan sounds kind of scary when you say it like that, Kate. So I know that.
Sorry.
No, well, even as somebody who's been in retirement plans for 20 years, there's a lot that I have learned since coming over to Fiduciary Wise and becoming more involved in the fiduciary space. So we have some of the service providers, listed in our chart and listed on the screen, but also there are certain functions that go underneath that. So from the plan sponsor perspective, who's taking care of enrollments and participant education, who's doing the record keeping, compliance, and plan design. So it's not just, okay, let's hire these people, let's delegate some fiduciary function, and now I'm done. It's making sure that all of those functions under the retirement plan are being taken care of, because not every service provider matches up exactly in how the services that they provide and what things on that checklist might be being completed every year. So it's very complicated, and it is important for anybody who's involved in a retirement plan to understand the different requirements that there are under the plan, and not just well, that service provider does that, but do they do that, and do you have a good handle on all that is part of the retirement plan and what's required that you know and be reviewing and be responsible for.
And Marta, the scary part, as you mentioned, the scary part is the word fiduciary, right? That as a plan sponsor, ERISA holds you as the plan sponsor, the fiduciary. And what fiduciary means is highest standard. And so there's this expectation of expertise, right? That ERISA holds. But so many plan sponsors, like very few plan sponsors are fiduciary experts, right? They don't spend what we have, probably over 50 years of combined ERISA experience on this podcast. Very few plan sponsors have 50 years worth of ERISA expertise, right? And so the challenge is that you've got plan sponsors that are experts in their field, experts at making widgets or providing consulting services or doing engineering or law work. They're experts in what they do, but they're not experts in ERISA. They're not experts in retirement plans. They're not experts in 401k administration or governance or investments. And so how does a plan sponsor fulfill those fiduciary duties to the highest level that it's required when they lack the expertise? And so that's, to me, that's the scary part, is that as a plan sponsor, how do I become an expert in this? And I've heard it described as like when you go to a mechanic shop with your car, and I don't know about you guys, but I am not an expert on car.
I am not.
Like, I take my car to a mechanic because I need him or her to fix that car. But it's like if you took your car into a mechanic shop and that mechanic, pops open the hood, looks under there and says, "Hey, Isaac, this is what's wrong with the carburetor, and here's this spark plug and it needs fixed. So here, just go do that." What would happen to my car, right? And I feel like in so many cases from a 401k perspective, plan sponsors can have a 401k mechanic come and say, "Hey, this is what's wrong with the plan, go fix it." That's kind of what role ERISA plays, but they're not capable to fix it. And so how can plan sponsors provide the expertise that is required under ERISA if they themselves are not experts?
That, I think, is the multi-million-dollar question, or multi-billion-dollar question, Isaac, because
make your checks payable to Isaac Wood, Kate.
There you go. Because when plan sponsors are put in charge of a plan, they don't necessarily get much or any training about what they need to know, which is one of those things that ERISA gives them a safe harbor to do something about. For instance, if a plan sponsor does not know what they should be doing for the plan, and that is the case for most plan sponsors. So don't feel badly as a plan sponsor that you're maybe feeling sometimes a little bit at sea about what you should be doing and when. So in ERISA, in the beginning, when they were first forming ERISA, the law came out in 1974, so it's 50 years ago. The beginning of ERISA, they did not really envision, when they were putting this law together, that the plan sponsor would be the person running the plan. It was that at that time, almost everybody had an actual pension plan, not a 401k defined contribution plan. That was like a whole different thing. And when it came out in 1974 and it became sort of popular a few years later, it was really meant to be the side pocket for your retirement. So you had your plan. You had your defined benefit plan that would pay you for life something every month, and that would help you retire. And then there was going to be this 401 side pocket, 401k, so that you could, do more traveling or, dinner out, or supplement your defined benefit plan. And that was the idea behind the 401k. Now, it became the main retirement vehicle. And in the beginning, when they were writing this law, the people who were writing this law envisioned that a trustee would run the 401k like they ran a defined benefit plan. So you'd have professional people running the plan, not the employer. But it turned out that there wasn't, as much uptake on the 401ks as hoped for. And so that was a little bit loosened so that the employer could sponsor the plan and do the basic administration work. But the loophole that the DOL gives you, I hate to call it a loophole, it's a safe harbor basically. If you know that you don't have all of the wherewithal you need to run the plan, the DOL lets you delegate to other prudent experts. So you can delegate legal and management, you can delegate the investments, you can delegate most of the administration. And so Isaac and Marta, why don't you talk about some of the administration things that can be delegated that people might not realize can be delegated?
Well, actually, real quick, Kate, your comment there reminded me of a blog that you wrote on Fiduciary Wise's website that I love so much. And you quote ERISA, as you tend to do. You quote ERISA in there, and as you mentioned, that they provide a safe harbor that allows you to bring in experts, right? I would take it a step further and say that they actually expect you to bring in experts if you don't have the expertise yourself. And so the quote that you pulled out, and I'll quote ERISA now: "The duty to act prudently is one of a fiduciary's central responsibilities under ERISA. It requires expertise in a variety of areas. And if you're lacking that expertise, a fiduciary will want to hire someone with that professional knowledge to carry out whatever that expertise is in any other functions." And so that's quoting ERISA. And so ERISA says, hey, we want you to be an expert. If you're not an expert, you want to hire someone. That's strongly encouraging. Maybe it falls just short of requiring. I'll let the legal minds decipher that. But it's definitely encouraging you that if you don't have the expertise yourself, bring someone in that does. And there's, to Kate, to your point, there's lots of areas that require expertise. And so, Marta, what are a handful of those that a plan sponsor needs to be an expert in, or have someone who is assist them?
You need to be an expert in all kinds of things. So an expert in investment management, selecting, monitoring investments. You can delegate fiduciary functions also under 316, which would be administrative fiduciary. So this is we could spend a whole podcast on the digging into all that you need to know. I think besides being, as you mentioned, Kate and Isaac, being an expert, I know I've talked to plan sponsors that are like, well, I think I got a pretty good handle on this. I'm not sure that they understand all that there is, but two, even if they did, is that really how they want to be spending their time? So they are building the widgets, like you mentioned, Isaac, or they are building their business, running their business. Is this really something that they want to do? They want that liability? Do they want to take the time to do that when they have other things that they could be doing to build their business? They want to provide a nice benefit to their employees, which they have done. So now the option is hire some people to help with those areas. And then even, of course, as the 402A fiduciary, they could hire Fiduciary Wise to be that overall oversight. So plan sponsors can never get rid of all of their fiduciary liability. There's still a few things that they're responsible for, like submitting contributions timely. We do not have access to bank accounts. Most places don't. Certainly, again, service providers that you can hire to help with those functions. You're still responsible for maintaining a bond. You're responsible for providing data to the service providers, to the TPA to run testing, maybe to the record keeper. Maybe they're helping with some of the functions for eligibility tracking and that kind of thing. But a lot of those fiduciary functions, most of those fiduciary functions, about 95%, can then fall under the umbrella of the 402A fiduciary, which you are, as we've mentioned, you can delegate fiduciary functions to a 338 for an investment fiduciary, to a 402A for the named fiduciary of the plan.
Well,
Exactly.
in addition to all the things to do, all the administrative duties required, it's the keeping records of having done all of those duties. But there's also a responsibility to keep track of how ERISA develops, right? Like,
Yes.
so Don Jones, the founder of Fiduciary Wise, we have heard him say many a times that ERISA is a living document, right? It continues
Yes.
to move and to live and to change with decisions as they happen through the courts. So are you on top of being XYZ widget company, which I think we will refer to often, but just doing that work, doing the work of a 401k plan, are you also paying attention to, plugged into what's happening in the courts and in legislation that applies, that then changes to ERISA and changes what you have to do and changes your responsibility and how you have to do it? And so are you plugged into that as well? So it's beyond just doing the things. It's paying attention to, are those still the right things to be doing? And are you doing them in the correct way?
Yeah. You're so right, Isaac. There's a jargon too, there's a jargon with expertise in everything, right? I don't have the medical jargon. I have some of the ERISA jargon, but I don't have other jargon, and I, I think it's an overwhelming task for plan sponsors to do their jobs that they do at their firm and also do this other really big job. The managing the plan is a really big job. And they may go to meetings with their investment professionals and hear from their third party administrator or their record keeper about what's going on. They submit their payroll, they do all the things that they need to do, but they may not know, the background of why and what the best practices are and how they can do that job optimally, which would save the firm money and save participants money and actually lead to incredibly much better outcomes, a more secure retirement for their employees. It's a huge benefit that helps people in firms that are hiring get people to come in and work there. And it's also a huge benefit on the other side when people are retiring and they can do so on time. And then more people that are younger can come up to more senior jobs. So, there's just a really societal and all kinds of benefits to running the plan really well. So can we go back to a little bit more of the nitty gritty of some of the kinds of things that we find that are sort of most frequently the things that plan sponsors might need more help with, that that we see mistakes on?
We see a lot of mistakes in knowing who is doing what. So for example, enrollment. It is the fiduciary's job to make sure that participants are notified that it's time for them to enroll in the plan. Here are the materials and information, provide them with economic empowerment, not just pass them in the hall and say, oh yeah, it's time to enroll in your 401k. Often when we have meetings with plan sponsors, they say, oh, my advisor does that. And the advisor says, well, yes, I can help with that, but I don't know when people are eligible because I don't have your payroll information. I don't know when you hire people unless you tell me. And then they say, I think the record keeper does that. And the record keeper says, well, I could do that, but the plan sponsor isn't providing data every pay period. So we don't have the ability to track that in our system. Those are the kinds of things that we see when we take on new clients and start kind of looking under the hood and to see what's going on and who's doing what. There is a lot of finger pointing. So I would say in terms of the types of holes, it's just a hole. Somebody thought somebody else was doing it, and it is an opportunity for improvement because we owe it to these participants. That is ultimately the name of the game. We are doing what's in the best interest of the participant, and having holes in our plan and in our service model lead to fiduciary liability. And ultimately, we are not doing the correct service for the plan participants. So I would say that's the kind of thing that we see. Sometimes people forget to file a 5500. The person who was supposed to sign it, they left in July. Somebody thought that they already signed it before they left. It didn't get signed. So again, as we look under the hood, it's what are the policies and procedures that you have around this? What are the the checks that you have to go back and monitor those to make sure that things are working the way that you thought that they were. And as things change in your organization, are those changing to match it? So we have the experience to look at all of the different avenues besides the experience that we have on this call. Our other partners have a vast experience in ERISA plans. So I think we work as a really great team to look at all of that. But plan sponsors do ultimately have that final responsibility if they have not delegated that.
And Marta, you hit on a key one there with the policies and procedures that we find so often walking into a plan of, you may be doing some of the right things, but do you have policies and procedures in place? And are you recording that that's being done? Are you able to, you can be doing the right things, but if someone comes and asks, are you doing the right things? Are you able to show that you were doing the right things? Are you able to prove that you were doing the right things? And so it's having those policies and procedures in the front end so that you can follow the same process, right? But then also the keeping track and the record that you sent out those notices, that you had that meeting. This is what we talked about. We reviewed those investments. These were the participants that were enrolled, and he's keeping track of all of that. That's a big document vault, keeping track of everything that comes into play. And I think so often plan sponsors are just like, hey, we have a 401k plan. Participants are using it. What else do we need?
Must be working great. Yeah. Well, and then in the HR department, I can't tell you how often we get a phone call because it's like, oh, hey, I'm new to the 401k plan. I just moved over here from wherever, and so left. What do I do? Well, where's the policies and procedures that you had in place before? Oh, we don't have those. Okay, well, here we go. So it's great for helping reduce disruption as well when you have turnover in staff that is associated with the 401k plan, because it happens. People leave, people come on, your team grows. It's such a great way to get people up to speed on what's going on in the plan.
Let's tie in policies and procedures to when mistakes happen in plans, which happens, you can have a tiny little error. It's still a mistake, still has to be reported. If it's not reported, it can grow to be a much bigger, terrible error. So you always want to, if there's a mistake in a plan, it's one of those things where you want to know if there are any mistakes in the plan. And we look at plans to make sure that we are making sure that there aren't, mistakes, or aren't mistakes that haven't been revealed, have potentially been covered up. Because there are two kinds of mistakes in ERISA. There's the mistake that is reported. Somebody made an error. Oh, forgot to send payroll. Oh, forgot to do this. Forgot to sign that 5,500. Well, we can repair that, but it has to be known. It has to be made known. And then there has to be a repair made. And sometimes the repair is, okay, we just sign that thing and send it in. Other times it's a bigger job. But one of the things with policies and procedures is that you can actually do a sort of a self-repair. The IRS and DOL have a way of letting you fix a mistake that you've made with the plan, that someone's made with the plan, very easily, very economically, and before it grows a big mistake. And that is a much better thing to do than to hide it under the rug. That's the kind of mistake we never want to hear about. I mean, we want to hear about mistakes, but we only want to hear, we don't want people to not tell us about them. We always look for, oh, there was an error here. How do we fix it? We love those questions because we can help them fix it before it becomes a big mistake, because big mistakes can actually be very costly to the plan sponsor and also to the company. I mean, there can be fines. And if somebody makes a mistake that is a self-dealing mistake, like, oh, somebody took money from the plan somehow, and it's not reported, and then it's hidden, and then it gets found out, people can go to prison over that. So, I mean, mistakes happen all the time. Keep them small. Let people know about them right away, because it can be fixed, and we work on that all the time, really.
That's right. But to tie that in, in order to have that, to do that self-correction, you do have to have those policies and procedures in place and regularly followed. So not the ones that got printed in the 80s and shoved in the bottom of somebody's desk drawer that you might can dig out, but the ones that people actually know about. And they don't have to be written, but that is the easiest way to prove that you actually have them.
The 80s were
such a good idea,
right?
Yeah. Yep, there were, but you know what? There's so many more policies and procedures and guidance and new laws from the DOL that it is. I mean, even for people who are in it every day professionally, it's just a lot to keep up with, and it's I think very hard for plan sponsors to know what all is coming out from the DOL and from the IRS and what the best practices are, and getting help with that can actually give you back something like, I don't know, I think between 10 and 40 hours a year of your life to do other things in your job and excel at your job, and have a plan that is really working for the plan's participants and so on and so forth. So, it just makes so much sense.
You just mentioned something that I think I want to make sure we call out here, especially in sort of the first episode of this season here, as we're talking about offering 401k plans to participants. And you mentioned it for the benefit of the plan participants. And that's one of the golden rules of ERISA, is that you're offering a 401k plan to your employees. You're held fiduciarily responsible for that plan for the benefit of your employees. At its core, at the soul of a 401k plan, it's an employee benefit. It's more than a bucket of funds. It's more than an investment vehicle, than a retirement vehicle. It's an employee benefit. And so the ERISA holds you as the plan sponsor, the fiduciaries of the plan, responsible for acting in the best interest, high standard, for those participants. Not the best interest for ownership, not the best interest for the service providers, not the best interest for HR. It's the best interest of the individual participants of that 401k plan. So I think that's an important backdrop to all these conversations, right? That when we're looking at the governance of the plan, when we're looking at the documentation and the operations of the plan, the administration of the plan, and the investments of the plan, the kind of the why behind this, who is this for, is always the participants. And all the decisions that are being made as service providers, as fiduciaries on the plan, should, and that's a key word, should be for the benefit of the participants, and they should be the driving force behind all the decisions that are being made. So just an important backdrop that plan sponsors, you are fiduciaries, and so the decisions that are made on the plan, got to be thinking about those participants.
Yeah, that's really a good point, Isaac. And it's one of those things. Since 2016, there have been 462 plus lawsuits against plan sponsors. And again, if you're the plan sponsor and there's a lawsuit that comes against your plan and you're signing that 5,500 because you're the named fiduciary, that little lawsuit comes to you in your office. They bring it to you and they say, here, you're being sued by XYZ. And it only takes one plan participant that's unhappy to bring a suit against a plan.
And Kate, are those year over year, are those growing or decreasing in number?
I would say that they're growing, but I think it varies year to year.
It's kind of like the stock market. It goes up and down, but I would say the trajectory is definitely headed up. Yeah.
But there are also these safe harbors in plans that plan sponsors can take advantage of. One is delegating the named fiduciary responsibilities, the overall umbrella over a plan, to a 402A named fiduciary, taking that liability off the table. Another one is delegating investment responsibilities for the plan investments to what's called a 338 fiduciary. A 338 is a fiduciary investment manager, and they're actually charged with the fiduciary responsibility for selecting, monitoring, and very important, replacing, if necessary, the plan investment options. And so, there are safe harbors with plan investment options. You can get a 338 to help you. There are so many things that you can do that you might not know about doing for your plan that could be very, very helpful. Marta, you've had such a long career on the record keeping and TPA side. What are some of the other things that you see that there are maybe safe harbors for, or best practice would help plan sponsors make sure that they're doing things the right way?
So I think we'll get into some of that in our future episodes, but I'll say one very common safe harbor is the 404C. And a lot of, if you're a plan sponsor, you might say, oh, I've seen that somewhere. And a lot of plan sponsors claim that they take care of that, but that's not just checking a box. There's actually some requirements that go along with that. And I would venture to say, I certainly didn't know what they were before I started working with Fiduciary Wise as a TPA. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen that box. I check it on some stuff. Well, there's requirements that go along with that. So I think as we kind of dig into in our future episodes, more get into the nitty gritty a little bit more, we can talk about those. But there's definitely some to be taking advantage of that we can cover this season.
That was a great teaser, Marta. Like that's
awesome.
Tune in next time. Coming to a fiduciary podcast near you.
Well, and speaking of next time, we're going to be talking about plan sponsor responsibilities and establishing, the need for best practices. Thank you for tuning into the Fiduciary Wise broadcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts and answer your questions. Please drop us a comment. You could look us up at fiduciarywise.com. We're all there. And send us a message or schedule with us. We would at fiduciarywise.com scheduling. We really love to talk with you. Don't forget to join us next time for more insights and discussions. See you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.